So I don't know how it's doing it. There's more weeds than plant. There's no right side of plant here. That's the only plant that's pushing it. The main's somewhere buried under this. Well, it's way off day. And somewhere in there, there's a pumpkin we gotta pick. Let's get into it and do some mowing. Alright guys, we're about 80% there. Got a lot of this mowed up. Just kind of want to go over this particular pumpkin and this particular plant. So this plant was the 2376 Bayuk. I had some major disease. This was one of the first ones to get hit with it. And the main pretty much rotted, stump rotted pretty quickly. I ended up growing a fruit on about a 5 to 6 foot main. And then I had about 7 secondaries, 4 on one side, 3 on the other. So I kept this over the part of the main, this little greenhouse, the entire season, from day probably 20, 25 of the fruit on, and tried to save the main once I got it dry. Worked out really well as far as that goes. Problem is, I didn't do anything after that. Once I knew I had it cleaned up and dried, I didn't fertilize, I didn't water, I didn't do nothing. So, you know, a lot of people say, hey, here's my 500-pound effort, here's my 1,000-pound effort. Here's my, we'll see what happens, and if it makes it, it makes it effort. So there is approximately 3 to 4 secondaries to the left. I continued to let those grow and become tertiaries and whatnot. It came all the way across and out the door of the other side. And you can see little babies that came through here and there that I just ran over and things. So there's going to be obviously some poundage lost. Not really too big of a deal. Like I said, this was just for fun fruit. Maybe get some seeds out to give the new growers. Great genetics in there. It's the 2376 Bayuk times self. So really excited about that. Color came out real good, which you can't see through the jungle, but it should be a pretty fruit. We'll get the rest of the way cleaned up here and give you a shot of it. Well, we got her uncovered, mowed around. I hadn't checked on her in a while. I haven't really uncovered her. And in looking at her, we're going to see what we got here. Got a heck of a crack that goes all the way around here. It does not go more than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm looking at it. It doesn't go to the cavity. But it's weird. Split all the way around to the back, but didn't go to the blossom. See, there's where it stops. So quite an interesting fruit we got here. Don't know, gonna ask a few growers and see what we got. But doesn't go into the cavity, not more than 1/4 inch deep. Can't see that being any different than a stress crack. But I've never seen one go like that horizontal with a fruit, so it just must be the silly shape that it is. Pretty interesting, huh? Look at that. She's a beauty. Great color. So before we get into lifting my fruit and getting that out of the patch for the weigh off, wanted to go over to Cameron's and show you his lift. It was the day before the weigh off, and he had a neighbor who had a tractor available. So this is by far one of the safest and easiest ways to get a pumpkin around this size loaded. It's the safest and most efficient manner. So I wasn't able to get any footage of my lift, but I did get 7th place at 850 pounds. It was a great weigh off and very successful. Cameron actually beat me by 1/2 pound. Nice job, Cameron. So we're back at the patch now. This is about a week after the weigh off, and we got to get the patch ready for a cover crop. This will be rested for next season. Okay, so pretty much got the whole patch mowed down. Got a lot of the stuff picked up. Still a couple of boards, a couple of T-posts I gotta get, and obviously the lifting tripod there. This will probably be the last year I use this lifting tripod. So it works for fruit probably, I would say 1,800 pounds or less, especially if it's fresh lumber. when you get into the aged lumber, maybe stuff that's been sitting for a couple years, drying out, not as good. Now I did lift an 1883 with this as is, and I also lifted a 2376, my 2376 from last year. But what I did do is I reinforced the top 2/3 with 2x6. I think they were 8 or 10 feet long. I'm pretty sure they were 10 feet long, but I could be mistaken. And then a lot of deck screws holding that on there. And what it does is it just reinforces the horizontal. So I put them in this direction so that it reinforced it. And it did well, but it still creaked. So this next year I'll be going to metal legs. I will be going to box legs in steel. So have a little bit of a design that I want to do for that, but that'll probably be in either an over the winter or next year video. But that's how I lift my pumpkins. I do use landscape fabric. I use it for a couple different reasons. I used it for a weed barrier. You can kind of see it here. And it worked pretty well for a weed barrier. And I also used it to try and keep soil just off of the main vines. So I did that on all my main vines. It does pretty well, but I did have disease in my soil, so it doesn't really do a whole lot for that. Just because if it's in your soil, your roots are going to bring it up, and it's not going to do a whole lot. So if you have it in your soil, the best thing to do is just treat your soil for the disease. I will probably continue to use this weed fabric. I really do like it, just from a weed block standpoint, a little bit of a neat and tidiness, and it does prevent some soil splash up later in the season and when it's raining a bunch. So the question is where do I go from here? So now that I got everything chopped up, like I said, I'll be cleaning out the remainder of the stuff in the patch. I'm gonna let this dry today and probably into tomorrow. And sometime tomorrow, midday or afternoon, I will be doing a soft till this. Even though the top is compact, the bottom should be relatively still broke up. So all I'm trying to do is kind of turn this over a little bit, disturb the roots. And I'm going to do a combination of Mighty Mustard or Kodiak Mustard, and also radish. I've used radish before. I really like it. It kind of gets down deep, brings up some nutrients that may have traveled further down, and gives you, I mean, the radishes can go, several feet down. So it gives you some penetration points for next year, helps with drainage. And it's a nice crop to go in with the mustard, just because the leaves seem to kind of grow at the same rate, so they don't kind of compete for each other. Now the application rate for the seed, I believe it's somewhere around a 1/2 pound per acre, if I'm not mistaken. So this will probably use somewhere around, I'm probably going to put somewhere around 3 pounds in this spot. It's probably a little bit overdue for that, but I'd rather overseed than underseed in this particular scenario. I really want to try and knock down this disease when it comes to the mustard. Now, a few questions people have asked, where did I get my wind fence? This is just off of Amazon. It's what they use for privacy around tennis courts and stuff like that. Relatively inexpensive. I think it's somewhere around $65 or so for, I want to say it's about 60 foot long. They are 6 foot tall by about 50 or 60 feet long. If you count the sections, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's about 50 or 60 feet long on those. So I leave it up all year long. This is the 3rd year I've left it up, and I have no issues. When I go to disconnect these and my entrance points, I do have these little clips here, and I have that on either end. So all the other ones are zip tied together. I have UV protectant zip ties. Those are the original zip ties. I have very few that break. I think I may have broken 2 in the last 3 years. But my entrance points here, I use those clips, little C-clips or
clevis clips, and they work pretty well. So if you have any questions on any of that, go ahead and put that in the comment section if you have any questions on the fence. Now the next question might be, what are you going to do after this cover crop of mustard and radish? So I'm hoping to get the mustard to flower stage before the end of this year. If I can get some blooms, I will then till it in. That really helps with the chemical that helps to kill off any of the bacteria and disease that's in the soil. And then I will set a winter rye after that crop. I will run winter rye over this winter, and then in the spring I will till the winter rye up, and I will either do a combination of buckwheat, oats, or hairy vetch after that. And then probably somewhere around the summertime, I really want to do a low cover crop. So I'll probably end up going with a clover and maybe a combination of clover and something else, just to kind of keep it low to the ground. Give something that I can also add some fungicides and maybe even some nutrients to throughout the year. And by doing that, I'm hoping that I'll build up the soil while growing the crop. Obviously the cover crop is going to uptake some of it, but what I'm hoping to do with that is to kind of enhance my nutrient levels during this time period next year. I'm going to try and get more regular on this. I don't know what day of the week yet, but I will try and do it to where these videos come up the same day of the week. I'll be doing different things here over the winter, so I plan to have a lot more videos up, and I'll go over those projects so that you guys can kind of know what to look out for. All right, guys, catch you later and growing big. Good luck at the scales.